I mean, I remember, David, it was right before I joined the Bernie campaign. I was still at The Intercept, and you had written this piece about Beto O'Rourke
Right,
reneging on his no fossil fuel money pledge. And
right,
boy, oh boy, was the establishment upset because they were very much positioning Beto to be Bernie but younger.
right.
The narrative that was very quickly
People are
emerging
still
was
mad at me about that article. It's really
they
weird,
really.
actually. I mean, it was literally like he raised fossil fuel industry money while voting at various times for the fossil fuel industry. It was written like straight down the line, and there was the argument was, well, he's from Texas, so he has to, or there's a big industry there, which is fine, but it's also fine. Like we should know who's giving money and what are like it was weird. It was, I mean, it almost feels like out of a different time in the sense
Hmm.
of like it's only recently that I think people are like, oh yeah, I guess we should want to know, right? It's like it's okay to like
Yeah.
know, right? But like some sort of like, and by the way, I think Beto O'Rourke's politics have gotten a lot better since what was it? You know, at this point, 7 years ago, he's got his politics have gotten better. But the point is that like it's weird that people used to get really mad at just being like, they took this money and they did this. And like, even noting that is somehow, you're
Yes.
a terrible
Do you
person.
remember the whole rigmarole around Hillary Clinton's speeches in 2016?
Totally.
Bernie raising the idea that there could be a
How dare
conflict of
you?
interest when you're getting paid millions of dollars to speak at Wall Street events was
Well, I mean,
like
there's this wonderful
sexism.
quote. I know. There's this wonderful quote from Barney Frank of all people. It's this great quote. It's from years ago, where he's writing about being in the House, and Barney Frank, he was talking about how, does money influence politics or not? And he was sort of saying, look, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he was sort of like, some people overstate how influential money is. Okay, like, there's this idea that anyone gets any contribution, they're just automatically bought, and it's a little more complicated than that. But then he said, the idea that money doesn't influence us at all, when people get mad, it's like we would be the first human beings in the history of human society to take money from people who want things and have it have no influence over us at all. Right? He's totally
Yeah.
right. Like
Yeah.
like this idea that money is flooding in, particularly from big donors, and that's what we're really talking about here. Like, I agree, grassroots, small dollar money for the very few candidates who can nationalize their campaigns, most of that money is coming in as like, I don't even know if I'd call it ideological money, but it's sort of idealistic money. It's not like, give me a legislative favor. But the real money that is salient in politics is the money that comes from big donors, small group of big donors who want things. And the idea that that money is pouring in at the level that it pours into both parties right now, and yet those donors don't want anything and aren't getting anything. I mean, literally no one believes that, and no one should believe that, which is why, by the way, in doing this book, every now and then I reread the Citizens United decision to see was it really that, like, I'm like, everyone thinks it's like really bad, but like, I'm like, and I think it's bad. Like, maybe it wasn't that bad. And then I go back and I read it. And I did this like last night. This is a line from Citizens United, or a couple lines. I mean, it's incredible. This court,
Yes.
the quote, direct quote, this court now concludes that independent expenditures, including those made by corporations, do not give rise to corruption or the appearance of corruption. Let me continue because it gets even crazier. I'm still going. Quote, that speakers may have influence over or access to elected officials does not mean that those officials are corrupt, and the appearance of influence or access will not cause the electorate to lose faith in this democracy. That is a direct quote of the court's opinion, written by Anthony Kennedy in Citizens United. I mean, like, that is insane. And yet that is the system we're in now. It's
You
amazing.
talk about these like Gilded Age backlashes. Like things get so bad, the people get so fed up, and so then we have some kind of reform.
Yeah.
You read something like that and you think, how the dickens did we not have some kind of blowback already.
But I think we did. I think Donald Trump was the blowback. I mean, people forget Donald Trump ran for president. Here's a crazy stat. I mean, it's really crazy to think about. One of the last polls before the 2016 election, Donald Trump, ABC's poll, Donald Trump is losing on every issue except one issue.
Yeah.
Corruption. And he wins. Right now, 2025, the most recent Reuters poll, as we're speaking, shows that the Republicans have a 2016-esque lead on the question of who do you trust more to combat corruption. Now, look, I will concede that part of that is what do we define as corruption, right? Like, how is that defined? Is the poll question, what does that mean to different, the word means different things to different people. But I think the point is that Trump in 2016 ran as, remember that it was one of his most famous lines where he was talking about how I know the system is corrupt because I've been a donor and I've bought politicians.
Yeah.
You've also donated to several Democratic candidates, Hillary Clinton included, Nancy Pelosi. You explained away those donations, saying you did that to get business-related favors. And you said recently, quote, when you give, they do whatever the hell you want them to do.
You better believe it.
So what specifically did they do?
If I ask them, if I need them, most of the people on this stage I've given to, just so you understand. A lot of money.
Not me. Not me. But you're welcome to give me a check, Donald, if you'd like.
Many of them.
Actually, to be clear,
That's
he
right.
supported Charlie Crist.
Not Mike.
Gave Charlie
But I have...
Donald, if you end your campaign, I hope you will give to me.
Good.
Okay.
Sounds good. Sounds good to me, Governor. I will tell you that our system is broken. I give to many people. Before 2 months ago, I was a businessman. I give to everybody. When they call, I give. And you know what? When I need something from them, 2 years later, 3 years later, I call them. They are there for me. And that's a broken system.
So what'd you get from Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi?
Well, I'll tell you what. With Hillary Clinton, I said, be at my wedding, and she came to my wedding. You know why? She had no choice because I gave.
Right? And it was like, the backlash is, we're going to vote for a guy who is at least admitting how corrupt the system is. And maybe he's corrupt, maybe he's not, but at least he's telling the truth and he'll I guess clean it up in his own way, right? I don't think that people think Donald Trump now, I mean, there's no pretense at all about the corruption. I don't think people think that he's cleaning things up, but I still think people probably see him as, he's sort of a pathological liar in his individual statements, but he's actually brazenly honest in his overall way he carries himself as in seeing the whole endeavor as transactional, right? He's not really.
Did you hear him say, I don't think I'm getting into heaven?
Go ahead. You had talked a couple weeks ago, you were doing an interview, and you talked about how you hope to end the war in Ukraine because it might help you get into heaven. How does this help? Does this help?
I mean, I'm being a little cute. I don't think there's anything going to get me in heaven, okay? I really don't. I think I'm not maybe heaven bound. I may be in heaven right now as we fly in Air Force One. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to make heaven, but I...
Right. I think people are okay, this guy clearly is not pretending that he doesn't see government as anything other than transactional. So at a certain level, that is actually honest. It's not honest in individual statements, but it's I am who I am honest, right? And I guess what I'm saying is I think 2016 was a backlash. And I think the real question is, where is the backlash that goes not in I don't mean a lefty direction. I just mean in a constructive direction.
Well, yeah, how I would answer that is, even if people have come to realize that Trump isn't draining the swamp and in fact is just remodeling the White House for some reason, I think that there's no person with clean hands to carry that message. And so it's a moot point. What, Kamala Harris is the anti-corrupt version, the person who's being publicly prevailed upon to get rid of Lena Khan? And
the messenger I think sometimes we like overly focus on individual candidates, but I also think it's true that like the wrong messenger cannot carry forward credibly an anti-corruption message. I mean, I just think like you're right. Like, who are the messengers for a real, credible anti-corruption message? I mean,
so who's going to do it? Is Gavin Newsom going to be
it's
the
not like
person
right,
who
like
looks
J.B.
less...
Pritzker is like a inherited billionaire. Gavin
Right.
Newsom is like having lobbyist meetings at French Laundry.
Right.
Right. Like I agree with you. Like there is a real vacuum here where I do think for a while Bernie filled that. I mean, one of the most having written speeches, Bernie, one of those popular lines was always the Citizens United line. Right. I mean, I'm not saying there aren't people. What I'm saying is that one of the people who emerges has an opportunity to make this not a side issue, but to make this the definitional issue of their candidacy.
And David, even Bernie seemed to resist, right? Going as hard on the corruption message as you would have liked, as I would have liked, as Nita Turner
yeah, I mean,
would have
we
liked.
both remember the Zephyr Teachout situation. Remember?
I do remember.
For people who forget, I mean, now to my mind, and I don't want to rehash, old.
Go for it.
History,
Come on.
but...
David, this is why we get together.
Okay. All right. Well, for those who forget that, the long and the short of that was Zephyr Teachout, the great anti-corruption crusader, wrote an op-ed. This is in like very pivotal moment in the 2020 campaign. Wrote this op-ed in The Guardian that said Joe Biden has a corruption problem. And she wasn't talking about Hunter Biden or anything like that. She was talking about how Joe Biden had like sided with the credit card industry to create a bankruptcy bill that hurt a lot of working class people, and right, like the real corruption, like the systemic, took lots of money, did bad things. And this like blew up into like oh my God, Bernie's campaign is like going negative, and how dare they? And what, it was like this whole like, instead of it being like, yeah, there's like a real point here, we should be talking about this. And the media's initial it was a story about Bernie going negative, which by the way was like a rehash of, remember when Bernie made that tweak at the Washington Post, like daring to suggest that Jeff Bezos owning the Washington Post means the Washington Post sometimes isn't that nice to him. Oh my, wait, how dare Bernie suggest that a media owner has any influence over his newspaper? I mean, it's so funny to think about now, knowing what we know about. But the worst part of that situation with the Zephyr Teachout op-ed was that Bernie could have leaned in.
Yep.
And instead he apologized to Joe Biden and backed off. And, it was a really deeply upsetting and disappointing moment. And I don't think it means that Bernie is corrupt. I don't think it means that I don't think it doesn't speak to his lack of commitment to the anti-corruption cause.
What does it speak to?
I think it speaks to certainly at that given moment. Okay. And these are snapshots in time, but at that given moment, it was a fear that was out of bounds of what the political conversation inside the Democratic Party could tolerate and bear.
Okay. And now we live in the zone.
I don't agree with that analysis.
Right,
but I'm just saying I think that was his right.
Of course. You were ground zero trying to push in the other direction.
Right.
But now this is part of my frustration, that now we're in the Zeron moment where it seems like, in a sort of Trumpian way, and I mean that as a compliment, he doubled down on all of the pro-Palestine stuff, won a primary, and now, I don't know if you read the Estede Herden New York Times piece, but he's being prevailed upon by all of these business interests in New York who seem to believe, whether or not it's true, that he is willing to, quote unquote, be reasonable and move to the center. And again, this is the characterization of the author of the piece, and there's some debate as to whether or not it's being accurate. Zoran's view of all of this is being accurately characterized. But it is frustrating that there was some indication that, in a similar way to what Bernie did in the story you just described, there is this feeling that doubling down and leaning in isn't going to be useful to you, even when you've just demonstrated the value of doing so and winning a primary that, frankly, no one really thought you could win. And as I look toward, midterms in 2028, I am not optimistic about the emergence of a candidate who has learned any of the lessons of Trump's success. I mean, I hate to have to frame it as Trump, but like, can we just learn a single lesson here? And I do wonder how you're, we're obviously so far ahead, but I would love to not have to be doing this lesser of two evil BS and having these same arguments 3 years from now. So, I mean, look at the field, not Gavin, not Pete, whatever. I mean, there's Ro Khanna, from our camp. People are speculating about AOC running. I'm not sure if you caught the AOC Bernie town hall the other day and what you made of it.
Yeah, I mean,
what I took from it is that Bernie still seems more vigorous and more able, frankly, than AOC or anybody else in the country today.
I think my take on all of this is, I mean, with Zoran, I think we don't know what he will ultimately do. I do think it's true. And I talked to Bill de Blasio about this. I mean, Bill de Blasio did a lot of things that the business community in New York did not like. And Bill de Blasio talked to me honestly about how you have, in a certain way, you have to be strategic about the battles you're picking, because they are so powerful and you are actually trying to get things done. And I think Bill de Blasio has a lot to look back on and say, look at what we actually did. Look at what we actually accomplished. And I think that I think the jury's out on what Zoran will actually do and how he will navigate this. I think all we can say is this when it comes to him, which is to say, how you get elected should help inform what you believe your political formula actually is and how you will be successful in office to get reelected. Now, I say that with an asterisk.
What do you mean by that, though?
How a politician wins and how they perceived how they got into office should deeply inform what they believe their political formula for success is. Right? If I got elected,
to say that if you compromise in your
it's to
race,
say that if I got elected promising to deal with the affordability crisis, and I understand that that's what my mandate is, then I probably should understand that if I don't deal with the affordability crisis and I side with the oligarchs who are profiting off the affordability crisis, I'm probably going to have trouble remaining popular among my voters and getting reelected. I mean, it's like a basic idea. Now, I said there's an asterisk. To my mind, the asterisk, unfortunately, is Barack Obama. Barack Obama got elected on people forget this. Oh, he ran as a moderate. That's a bunch of horse shit. He didn't run as a moderate. He ran as a populist in the middle of the financial crisis, and he got in and he converted hope and change into more of the same, siding with Wall Street in various ways, the donors who were literally throwing 10 million families out of their homes. And he threw out Robert Reich. He threw out his more progressive economic advisors for Wall Street. I mean, I don't want to rehash all that. But the point is that I think the reason why the 2009-2010 moment was so enduringly pivotal to what we're living through now is because people's hopes were raised and then they were destroyed. And essentially the social contract, the belief that what politicians campaign on, they will try to deliver on, was destroyed, or at least harmed from where it even was back then, was, I think, because of that moment. And I think that, but I guess what I would say is that I think that we have to say, as voters, as people interested in politics, as engaged citizens, that the way politicians get elected, the formula that they get elected, should be impactful to what they do in office. And so that's something that we can sort of have some agency over, right? If Zoran wins promising X, Y, and Z, Zoran should see that delivering on X, Y, and Z is part of the way to succeed. And so to all the way to get to your point about the midterms and the presidential race, I think what I'm looking forward to is not any one candidate. It's that with a lot of candidates in that race, they're all going to be angling for different lanes. And I do think there's a chance that somebody will see, cynically or not, because I think most of them are cynical, right? Like I don't have a lot of faith of what's in their heart. It's like, does somebody see a political opportunity in being the anti-corruption candidate? And I go back to John McCain, right? Like, do I know that John McCain in his heart was like really Mr. Anti-Corruption? I mean, he was still raising big money off of various industries while he was the Senate telecom chair, right? Like, I mean, like, I don't care what was in John McCain's heart. What I know is that back then, John McCain saw an opportunity for himself in elevating that set of issues, which ultimately resulted in real policy change. And so I think in the Democratic primary, you're going to see people angling for an opportunity in that lane. And I agree with you. Yeah, At that point, the danger will be, is somebody faking it? Is somebody bullshitting us?
That's the whole problem.
Sure.
And that's what I'm seeing it everywhere. I've been saying this in the podcast. Everyone has figured out how to say, it's not left, right, it's top down.
Right.
We have to, like, everyone knows what to say now. And those aren't bad things to say, but they're things you can say that don't actually mean anything. Your Obama example is instructive. And we all saw this happen in 2020 also. It was like Medicare for all who want it. Right. And I'm having these absurd, I was reflecting recently on this absurd exchange I had with John Favreau on the Bernie podcast, where he was trying to sell Kamala's Medicare for All program as legitimately single-payer health care. Right. Gavin Newsom just told Van Lathan that California basically had universal health care. He just said that. He just said it.
But I would ask you this. Zooming out a little bit.
Yeah.
Don't you think, like, I totally agree with you. Like, fraud patrol is important, right? And everyone's, angling and it's in some cases not easy to see who's serious, not serious. It is easy to see who's unserious or who's just, paying lip service. But I also think like this represents, if you zoom out, like the Overton window, if you will, moving around. Right. And the Overton window is like a sort of a technical term. It's like the terms of the debate. My view is if everyone feels the need to be talking about Medicare for all, okay, in general, that's a good thing, even if some people are talking about it.
Okay, but Sirota, where are we today?
Well,
everyone was forced to talk about Medicare for all in 2020, but now it's 2025 and almost 2026.
Well,
and where are we?
Here's what I believe. I do believe we are at a point when it comes to something like healthcare where the perceived pace of change is maybe changing itself. The pace of change may be changing. And I think what I'm saying is that I put it this way. We don't know where in our story we are. Let me give you a historical example that I think about all the time. 1964. You're a conservative. You get your nominee who you want. You cannot believe the nominee that you just got for the Republican Party. You just got Barry Goldwater as the nominee, who then proceeds to lose the biggest landslide in the modern history of the United States. So after that election, you're like, that's it. Like, we're done. It's over. Like, the whole thing, it's the darkest, if you're a conservative, right? 16 years later, not that long, you've got the Heritage Foundation with its original Project 2025. You've got Ronald Reagan. You've got the revolution. And I guess what I'm saying is like, I don't know where in the story we are. Like, there's one argument that Bernie Sanders in 2016, that is 1964.
Right, but David, I'm not arguing that it was wrong for Bernie to have run or that we all wasted our time or that it's not a good thing that Medicare for all was popularized and that the polls show that it remains a popular policy. I'm not arguing any of that. What I'm saying is what I feel like my job is to root out the charlatans.
That is your job.
And to try to provide a divining
That's my job
rod
too, as a
that
journalist.
is more accurate. Yeah, I just didn't want to speak for to tell you what your job was. That's why I framed it that way.
Right.
But yes, a divining rod is actually not the best analogy, because I want something that's an accurate scientific tool and not pseudoscience hooey. I need a metric that can enable people to anticipate when elites, the establishment, figures out ways to neutralize our gains. Because that is the story of the Powell Memo, right? The story of the Powell Memo is that there was a labor movement in the 30s and 40s. There was a civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s. There was a women's liberation movement. There was a gay rights movement. All of these amazing things were happening. They said, hold up, hold fast. We got to do something about this. And they turned it around. They figured out how to neutralize our gains. And my frustration is Democrats similarly figure out how to neutralize their gains. Bernie came so close in 2016 and they were like, oh shit, can't let that happen again. And they figured out how to rally the troops in 2020. Obama picked up the phone. He knew they could get people to drop out and consolidate around Biden. They figured out the new terms. They saw that labor was effectively able to mobilize resources to force politicians to prioritize the interests of working people. Lewis Powell said, no, we're not doing that anymore. We can do the same thing as corporations and we have more money. And the Democrats, frankly, didn't turn around and say, oh, well, let's build up labor. Let's support labor as a way to push back. They were like, maybe, great. Now I don't have to do what labor wants me to do. Now I can do with these interest groups that frankly align more with my interests, because I'm a millionaire too. And everybody's a happy camper. And now we have one big uniparty. So my experience is that it's not sufficient to sort of laud our gains when the Overton window moves, because the opposition, whether it's a Democratic opposition or Republican opposition, is so quick. It is evolving faster than us.
I think there's where that is where I disagree. I don't think they're evolving faster than us.
You don't?
I don't. I think that, like,
why not? What's the evidence that we're sort of catching up here?
I think the unpopularity of the Democratic leadership among Democratic voters is unprecedented in a good way in our life.
Hey YouTube, thanks for watching. Just a reminder that this is a podcast. You can catch an extra premium episode every Monday for $5 a month at patreon.com/badfaithpodcast. That's patreon.com/badfaithpodcast for $5 a month, an extra episode every week. Additionally, please do consider liking this video, subscribing to this channel. It helps us out. It helps independent media beat the algorithm. We appreciate you. And as always, keep the faith.